Let's now talk to Vietnam Enterprise and Thao. Good morning, Thao.
Good morning, James.
Thank you for doing this. I'm definitely interested to hear what you've got to say about Vietnam. It's something that it's a country that we know and love. So you've got a presentation which we'll run through. So I'll let you sort of start off by introducing the fund, please.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thao Ngo. I am a member of a portfolio management team of the Vietnam Enterprise Investment Limited, also known as VEL, which is the investment trust ticker on London Stock Exchange. Today, I will give you an introduction about VEL. Next slide, please. Could you go to the previous slide, James?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, this one. Sorry, I could not turn on my camera.
Oh, don't worry. Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so VEL is a Dragon Capital flagship fund established in 1995, which the main focus on the Vietnam stock market. The investment trust is also one of the biggest and oldest Vietnam fund in operation. The fund was launched even 5 years before the stock market opened. So we were one of the first participants in the Vietnam stock market. We participate actively in both privatization program of the government for the state-owned company and also for the private company. So with long presence in Vietnam, we build a very strong relationship with the entrepreneur community in the country, and in which some of them now become the top private company in the Vietnam market nowadays. So with the good track record and the big size of VEL of 1.3 billion pounds as of today, we are one of the first names that entrepreneurs in Vietnam want to have as an anchor investor when they have a plan for capital raising, for IPO, and etc. They were listed in London Stock Exchange in July 2016 and also a member of FTSE 2050. So our objective to managing VEL is to deliver a sustainable long-term growth for investors. And to achieve this return, we have a rigorous investment process run by a team of 3 people, together with 12 in-house analysts that identify the sectors that most benefit from the Vietnam macro development. And then we identify the company that display on of the corporate governance, earning growth, and also ESG screening with the lead sectors in superior and sustained growth. So the question is, why is Vietnam? And what makes Vietnam more attractive than other markets? So please have to move to the next slide, please. James, could you please have to move to the next slide?
So the FDI one, I've got that.
Yeah, okay. So Vietnam economy has delivered one of the strongest GDP growth in the world in recent years. In 2022, our GDP growth is 8%. And we believe the growth momentum will continue in the coming year. For this year, 2023, we think the GDP is expected at 6.5 to 7%. And through the consistent in macro policy and the maintenance of political stability, Vietnam has created a platform for steady GDP growth, middle class formation, and FDI led the export. As you can see in the picture here, meanwhile, we have the FDI continue to move even higher. We forecast 10% rise in the disbursement FDI this year at around $22 billion US. And next slide, please.
Okay.
Vietnam have signed many free trade agreements with the world. So we have a partnership with many countries. Recently, Korea just signed a pact with Vietnam to be so-called a comprehensive strategic partner. And to mark this, Korean companies immediately pledged to invest around 15 billion US dollar in new plants, including 6 billion from LG and Samsung. Next slide, please. Okay, so there is an increasing proportion of the tech player which help Vietnam to transform from low value production to electronic cluster now. It's not only the household name piling anymore, but the Apple, Samsung, Foxconn, Lego, and Xiaomi open factories in Vietnam. And it's worth to mention that the Apple will start production the MacBook in Vietnam in the second half of this year. And with around 10 million MacBook projected to be produced this year, it was around like 10 billion US dollar, which is equivalent to 3% of the number of export. So the worries about the geopolitical tension and shifting out of China, many tech companies such as Google, Apple, and others have moving some work to nearby country, and Vietnam has been benefiting from the acceleration product shipment, right? Next, I will talk about another key growth driver in Vietnam. Previous slide, please.
So infrastructure.
The middle class formation.
Sorry, which question?
Could you move to another slide, please?
Yeah, infrastructure spending.
Next one. Yeah.
Middle class.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So another key growth driver is the domestic consumption, which driven by the growing middle class in Vietnam. So as of 2022, out of 99 million population, 30% were middle class, according to McKinsey definition. And the middle class in Vietnam is expected to continue to expand to 54% of the population in 2030, which is increased hugely in the next 10 years. And it's worth to mention that the GDP per capita of Vietnam now has reached to 4,100 US dollar in this year, which means Vietnam has moving to upper middle class, middle income economies from lower middle income economy. The level of 4,000 USD GDP per capita indicates that stronger local consumption. So with this level of income, people will spend more money for higher value services, such as insurance, banking service, which is good for the financial and banking sectors. So now we move back to the infrastructure development. Yep. Yeah. So this is, last but not least, also a key economic driver for the Vietnam economy. We believe that the government will start to ramp up the infrastructure after going slow on it for some years, as the monetary policy has been less relaxing given the high interest rate like anyone else in the world. The fiscal policy via public spending, via the infrastructure development will enhance and support the monetary policy this year. So the push of infrastructure investment could bring some certain excitement for the market and economy. The disbursement target for this year seems high at 30 billion US dollar, but we think the government is really determined to achieve that. Some key projects like the North-South Expressway, because you can see that Vietnam has, a long country, and we need to when we travel from the north to the south, normally we need to take flight. Now the government wants to expand more expressway from the north to the south to support for the logistics, right? So the key infrastructure project like the North-South Expressway has been kicked off, which raise hopes that the disbursement in the infrastructure investment in Vietnam will boom this year. So,
is that all being funded by the government, or is it done in sort of conjunction with private money?
We already have around 40 billion US dollar accumulated in the public in investment in the account of the state bank already. So it's just waiting for disbursement.
Cool. Okay.
Okay. Next slide, we will talk about like how we reflect the key role driver of the Vietnam economy into our portfolio, right? So now we have 3 investment themes in our portfolio: middle class formation, robust domestic consumption, and infrastructure development. That's why we have the big allocation for the 3 sectors like banks, real estate, and retail business, as these sectors will benefit for the long term from this macro development. We have a quite concentrated portfolio with 29 holdings, in which the top 10 shown in the table here already occupy around 63% of the portfolio. So the 3-person portfolio management team work very closely with in-house research analysts to decide which is the high conviction investment theme for the portfolio. For example, our top holding here, number 1, VB Bank, which is one of the biggest retail bank in Vietnam. Already it's only occupied 3% in the index, but we have 13% of AUM in this investment, which is more than 4 times overweight, as we believe this bank outlook is much more compelling than the other investment opportunity. Our Mobile World, the third name, is a top retail in the country. We have 8% in the portfolio, while it's only 1.6% in the index. So overall, all of these high conviction names give the fund's active share ratio of around 58%. Right? For valuation, but for this year, they'll continue to deliver high earning growth than the market at 21% for the earning growth compared to the market of 7%, and traded at cheaper valuation with the PER of 9 times compared to the market of around 11 times. So for 2023, we expected the corporate earnings to remain positive and putting the valuation between in the range of 8 to 9 times on forward basis. Next, I will talk a little bit detail about 2 case studies, and it's also one of the biggest investment in our portfolio. Firstly is the VB Bank. VB Bank is one of the top private bank in Vietnam. We like VB Bank because they are the leader in the mass market segment, and it has the first mover advantage. 60% of the Vietnam population is underserved in the banking service now, so the mass market is very key to Vietnam's future banking. VB Bank is also a digital pioneer. It's the first bank in Vietnam to build big data analysis system and apply new technology application. So this has helped the bank to reduce the loan approval, reduced to just few hours, while other peers need to spend days, right? So benefiting from the strong mass customer base, the operating income is ranked number 1, and VB Bank has been tripled its return on asset. Next is another top holding in our portfolio, which is the Mobile World. Mobile World is not only the largest retail in Vietnam, but it is also approaching the Southeast Asia top 1. To describe Mobile World in one sentence, we call it an Amazon of Vietnam. For the last 5 years, Mobile World dominated the mobile phone and consumer electronic segment with 45% market share. Now, it's a new era lies in a $80 billion grocery market, which is still 90% dominated by traditional trade. This gives the scope for Mobile World to repeat the same success on a far bigger scale. So this year, 2023, the company earnings likely to push by 25%, thanks to successful turnaround in grocery business. Mobile World offer a deep valuation, trading at 14 times earning, often misperceived as a traditional brick and mortar retail, but in fact, Mobile World's online revenues is even larger than the combined value of Vietnam's top 4 e-commerce platforms. And the company is looking to do the IPO for its subsidiary, which is the grocery business this year. And we expect Mobile World could easily double its valuation when the company unlocks its value via the IPO of the subsidiary. Next slide. We would like to brief mention about the Vietnam market performance in 2022. It was a bad year for Vietnam stock market with a drop of 34%. The drop in the market was due to both the global headwinds with the Fed hiking rate, geopolitical tension, but there's also a local issue on the bond market crackdown and the tightening in the bank loan too. But it's worth to notice that Vietnam has increased double in 2 years, 2020 and 2021. And then the government decided to have some intervention in the bond market to make the market more transparent and protect the right of the retail investor. So the liquidity shortage was the main reason for the market downturn last year, while the Vietnam macro situation remained solid. Recently, we saw the Vietnamese authorities are well aware of kind of negative side effect from the discipline measure, and recently they have a list of action to restore the confidence in the financial market. And next slide, please. So the correction in the market have bring the valuation of the Vietnam in general at a very cheap valuation, only around 10.6 times of PER. It even lower than the COVID bottom when all of the economic activity were paused, and it's also lowest in the average of the last 13 years. And given this opportunity, the foreigner are well aware of the opportunity. Next slide, please. And have been buying in. They have bought around 1.3 billion US dollar from November until now. And the foreigner, as you can see the attractiveness of the valuation given the potential growth of Vietnam in the coming time. So with the piling in of the flow of foreign investor, it creates the bottom for the market.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so to conclude my presentation, I think the fluctuation in global macro situation and rising interest rate, as well as some issue in domestic market, Vietnam market may see some fluctuation in the first half of this year. However, in terms of the market valuation on a forward-looking basis, Vietnam is below its average 13 years valuation, while the economic growth of Vietnam remains one of the highest in Southeast Asia. So we think this is where the investor would see a long-term growth, even with various pressure might coming from the outside world. So in that context, we think Vail is confident to identify the best company in terms of long-term business growth. Also, is the primary reason for foreign investors to look into Vietnam market. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Okay, we've got some questions coming up. So let's start with sort of the big picture ones. So there's a story that PwC thinks that Vietnam is going to be one of the 20 largest global economies by 2050. Do you think that's something that's achievable?
Yes. I think for this year, the government still target the GDP growth of around 6.5 to 7%. There was some pressure for the inflation. Given we could raise some the fee in the education, and also some pressure in the foodstuff. However, we think the 4.5% to 5% in the inflation is still under control.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that been sort of talked about for years is whether Vietnam is going to be upgraded from a frontier market to an emerging market by people like MSCI. Do you think that's something that's likely this year?
For the Vietnam market satisfies all the criteria about the size and also about the liquidity. Vietnam market size now around 250 billion US dollar, and our daily turnover is around 700 million to 800 million US dollar. So in terms of size and liquidity, we satisfy to be qualified as a emerging market. However, the only issue that's hold us back from upgrading to EM is about the foreign ownership limit. So the Vietnam government set the foreign ownership limit of 49% for the general company and 30% for the banking sectors. So many matters has been discussed to solve this issue, including a non-depository receipt, similar like Thailand mechanism they treat for foreign investor, has been discussed. But I think it takes time for the government to set up entities and also kind of some execution to implement that. So I think this problem could be solved in the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay, the 2 or 3 years, yeah, exactly. Because we've seen when that happens with other markets, you get quite a big lift up in valuations as more money can come into the country. So we'll see. In terms of the sort of domestic investors, are people saving money from their pensions and stuff into the stock market?
Vietnam market is still Vietnam stock market is still a young market, right? So the number of the local participants in the stock market now only around 5% of the population, right? So most of the money now people just still put in the bank deposit in some real estate, and also like the old generation, some still put like under that pillow. So in the last 2 years, given the COVID lockdown, there's an increasing in the participation of the retail investor. The number of new account opening in the last 2 years increased 6 times, right? Similar to other countries, when you have a low interest rate environment and you just stay at home, the retail investor open new account in the stock market. And also thanks to a new development in the stock market in Vietnam is the eKYC process. So like people before the retail investor have to fly to big city like Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi, the capital market, to open account. Like in the last 2 years, they just stay at home, do the eKYC and open the account quickly. So the participant of retail investor has increasing. However, if we compare that level of participant of retail investor in Vietnam compared to other markets like Taiwan or Korea, who retail investor occupy around 80% or 90%, we still have a long way to go there. So I mean, there's still a lot of room for the Vietnam market to develop in the coming time.
Does Dragon Capital manage other funds apart from Vail that invested in Vietnam?
Yeah, Dragon Capital now manage around 6 billion US dollar, in which a majority part of money we manage from the offshore, like Vail and some other open-ended fund. However, a also important part of our products is manage the local money. So we, in terms of the local money, we have both managed in the active fund and also in the passive fund via 3 ETF product, which focus on the top 30 biggest company in Vietnam called VN30. And so we also have some 2 other products in the FO of the full foreign ownership limit stock called Diamond ETF. And another just launched is to invest in the mid-cap companies. So we are very actively in managing also the domestic money, and we also try to give, provide more education for the retail investor in Vietnam to, bring them to a more professional product.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Looking at this slide that I've got up here, which is macro forecast one of the interesting things is that there's a positive trade balance all the way through. And then if you look at the next one, that sort of feeds through into quite sort of strong currency. But do you think then that's maintainable? And what do you think is going to happen with the currency versus the dollar, for instance, this year?
Yeah, so as you can see in the picture here, the Vietnam the Vietnam dong last year, has been trying to maintain quite strong in the first 8 months until August. Then we had the government decide to depreciate around 9% to make it consistent and competitive to all the regional peers. We think the currency now will remain stable thanks to some factors. Firstly, the USD now has been stabilized and weakening. The DXY has dropped to the level of below 103. And more importantly, with the stability in the Vietnam dong now, some FDI has been, buying back the Vietnam dong. And also there's a strong reserve in the balance sheets.
So that could be a tailwind for returns this year, perhaps. Okay, let's talk a bit more about portfolio now, I think. There's a few questions on this. The first question on here is, do you own Vinamilk? Because that for ages, that was the biggest investment in all of it in Vietnamese funds.
Yeah, Vinamilk used to be also our top holding for many years ago. However, we decided to reduce our position in Vinamilk because the potential growth for the company has been reduced to single digit. Given the market share of the company has increased and it has been stagnant there for a while. The Vinamilk market share for all of their dairy products now above 50% for all of their products, and it's quite challenged for them to gain more market share from the others competitor. And given its high valuation of about 20 times, we think the attractiveness of its investment opportunity is not less compelling than other opportunities. That's why we reduce position in Vinamilk to buy into more potential growth name like Mobile World, which is the biggest retail operator in Vietnam, who will gain the biggest market share, who they has been accumulated the market share from all of the mom and pop shop in Vietnam to transform from the very traditional trading pattern to the modern trading pattern.
Good, thank you. Is there a sort of concentration risk with having so much in banks?
Well, actually, you can see the component of the Vietnam market. In the Vietnam index, the bank already occupy around 35%. And secondly is the property, which 20%. So we, in terms of the market structure, the bank and the property are the two biggest sectors in the market. For the banking in the VAL portfolio, we have the overweight, but we selectively invest in 6 names out of the 13 names listed in the market. So we prefer to invest in the dynamic and young private bank than the SOE, because we see this group of bank has been very active. Their management team is a pioneer in all of the new themes in the banking sector in Vietnam, for example, the digitalization. And we think this group of banks will move faster than the SOE bank in the long term.
Good, okay.
Yeah.
Cash that you got there about sort of 1%. Do you use gearing in the portfolio? And what's the sort of normal level of cash?
Normally, we go fully invest. The cash level in the fund normally is less than 2%. And actually, during the market correction in April and to August, we raised our cash level to around 8 to 9%. And then when we see the valuation of the market have reached to the attractive level, we already dispersed some of our money to some attractive long-term investment opportunity. And one of them I could make an example is a Canadian house. It's a leading property player in Vietnam. However, given the market correction, the price were oversold, while the long-term and the core business of this company is still very solid. So recently we have bought into some distressed and undervalued name. That's why this bring our cash level back to the low level, as you mentioned, at around 1%.
But would you borrow money to invest as well?
No, actually the loan facility in our portfolio, it's just used for the cash management purpose. As I mentioned before, in the past, we used to participate very strongly in the privatization or the IPO of the company. The cash there just help us, to facilitate in, participate in the auction where we're not sure about the result yet. So we use the money from the loan facility to finance for the buying first, and then we raise cash from taking profit from other opportunity investment to pay back for the loan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Petro Vietnam gas. I mean, well, it's just sort of bigger picture. How's Vietnam been affected by sort of the spike in energy prices in 2022? And was that something you tried to play in the portfolio? Well, actually,
Vietnam for the energy sectors, we do not have to import much from the outside world. 40% of the electricity in Vietnam is generated by hydropower, and then some of the others was from the coal-fired plant, and the rest, just around 10%, is from the gas thermal plant. So in general, for the oil and gas sectors in the portfolio, the only name that we think is investable is the BV Gas. It's the biggest gas transmission company in Vietnam, and it has been benefiting from the accelerating gas price last year. But we just view, I think, a slightly overweight in that company because the stock price is, very, I think, sensitive to the commodity price. And given the current market environment, there is a slowing down in the commodity price, we just maintain a neutral weight to underweight in this position.
We've got in the sector, I think we've got a fund which is investing in solar in Vietnam. Is renewable energy an increasing thing? Is there anything that you could play that like?
Yeah, the renewable energy is also is developing in Vietnam. However, most of them are like unlisted name. Is a private equity play where we, very I think like we need to do a very careful DD. And actually for Vail, we try to manage the unlisted part at below 15% of our portfolio, and that company have to have a clear timeline to be listed within 2 years.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Property. How does the property market look? I mean, I know because people are comparing it here to China. I mean, in terms of like affordability of housing, is that something that's okay?
For the property market in Vietnam, I think it's have something very different with the China property market. Firstly, the leverage, the debt ratio of the property company in Vietnam is much lower than the company in China. For the listed market, the property company have the debt ratio just around 30%, right? While the bigger name in China like Evergrande or something, the debt ratio is above 2 times, right? So it's different. Secondly, in the recent year, the government has a campaign of anti-corruption, which help to where they do some very careful on the paper approval for the property projects. That's why in the recent year, the supply for the property market is limited, which make I think still a potential for those property names that have a clear land bank, strong in execution ability to gain more market share in the coming time.
Okay, thank you. Are there any sectors that you just don't invest in? And do you invest at all in any of the sort of state-owned enterprises?
Because we have the ESG screening in our investment process, so there are some sectors which we are not allowed to invest in. For example, like rubber plantation, or tobacco, or something like violate in the ESG compliance. And secondly, for the SOE privatization, it was a big theme in 4 years ago. However, given the difficulties and the challenge in the stock market, the government has been paused in the new capital raising. But we think it will coming back when the market get more stabilized.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do you measure the portfolio's active share in its beta?
Our betas is normally around less than 1%, one times. So it means like our portfolio less volatile than the market movement.
And active share is obviously pretty high because you're taking quite big bets versus the index.
Yeah, our active share ratio is 58%. As you can see, how we go high conviction in our top 10 holding.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And in terms of the rating of the portfolio, is it more expensive than the index?
In terms of the valuation, the PER of the fund now is around 8.5 times compared to the market of around 10.9 times. So we are trading at cheaper valuation.
Oh.
Yeah.
And what sort of earnings growth have you got on that?
The earning growth for this year is for 2022 is 22%, And for 2023, we are doing some projection, but the prelim number is around 8%.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. We're running out of time. Maybe we'll have time for one more. Tourism, actually, that's just popped up. I think that's an interesting one because obviously that was one of the things that probably got hit with COVID. Is that now sort of firing on all cylinders again?
Yeah, the tourism is also an interesting sector and we think that we will have a strong recovery this year because China now opened the gates, right? And the Chinese tourism occupy around 32% of the total number of tourists to Vietnam. And now when the China open the gate, I think the tourist sectors will coming back strongly this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Good. All right. We've covered a lot of ground there, Thao. So thank you very much for that. There's always questions we don't get around to, but I'm sure we can do them another time. So we'll keep an eye on you and follow it all with interest, I think, going forward, and maybe get you back again in a year or so and see how it went. But yeah. Thank you very much for today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, see you later. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Here we go. Good. So, thank you very much for listening today. We'll be back next week talking to RTW Venture, who we've had on the show before, but they've been quite busy since, and they've had a couple of quite interesting portfolio events recently that have helped drive the NAV forward. So that's good, which will be interesting. And then on 27th of January, we're going to be talking to the new manager of Ecofin US Renewables. And I do think that that's a stock that derated when the previous management team walked out, a bit like it's a Digital 9. And now it has got a new manager. I do wonder whether it should just get re-rated back to asset value again straight away. So tune in then and see what you think about Eileen. So thank you very much for listening today, and we will be back and talk to you next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.